You're listening to The Heart of You on Paris Underground Radio. For more great content, please join us on Patreon.
Hello, my name is Annette DeLu, and you are listening to The Heart of You, where we explore tools and modalities for your soul discovery. You will not only improve your relationship to yourself, but also your relationship with others on a spiritual, emotional, and physical level. Are you ready to discover who you truly are? Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to The Heart of You. And today we're going to talk a little bit about being fearless. And I'm going to be discussing this with Charlene Lite. She's a fearless coach and soul guide who combines spiritual, psychic, and practical tools to help move you from the old, outdated version of who you are into the powerful co creator you came here to be. Charlene, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, I like to start every episode with a spiritual awakening story. So, why don't you go ahead and give us your journey, your story, what brought you here?
Gosh, that's a big question. Well, I'll just start from I spent my 20s kind of living with what people told me would bring me the most happiness, right? Like get the graduate college, get that job, get the 401k, make a certain amount of money. I was like on that track, even though I had this secret passion of wanting to be a singer. I had always dreamed of being a singer. And although I was doing that sort of in my late 20s, I didn't really share it all that much because it was really not something that my parents and my family were supportive of. Really, just because they understood how hard it was to actually quote unquote make it. So I understand that. But growing up with that belief, which I realized later, I internalized that as like not being good enough. And so what happened is when I was approaching 30, I was like, I don't want to wake up and it's 5 years goes by and I'm still at this job. I was just miserable and I was like aching for something different. So I'd always dreamed of moving to New York. I was like, what if I just moved to New York and I quit this corporate job and I just gave music my all? Like, what would that feel like? I was kind of following that musical or that starving artist trope. Like, what would it feel like if I gave my music my all and moved to an entirely different city where there's just artists like me everywhere? So that's what I did. Moved to New York, quit the job, the safety, everything, showed up, decided to become a bartender, even though I don't drink. So I was doing everything that like I thought would lead me to my success. I'm like, I'll just be a bartender, right? Because that's so cliche. And I went to bartending school and I did get a job. I didn't lie about it. It was so funny. I got this job at Bowmore Lanes, if anybody is familiar with New York City, which was like a very popular bowling alley that was kind of like this hip place. But anyways, so I'm working all these odd jobs and then it started to hit me like, I'm not happy doing this. I didn't feel satisfied just waiting until my job was over to kind of feed my passion. It started to weigh on me. My age started to weigh on me. I was in my early 30s and everybody around me was in their early 20s and I just felt like I don't fit. So then the first thing I did was just like quit that job and decide to go and work at a sports club or like a very fancy gym because I'm like, this is more aligned with me. Maybe if I just change the job, that would be helpful, right? So I'm working at this fancy sports club LA on the Upper East Side, and I'm still, although that gave me some relief, and I will say, because I tell people this a lot now, which is like, you have to really know what you value, right? Because you're just following what everybody else is doing, like you're going to stay miserable. So at least I was a little bit in alignment then. And I was meeting people that actually did kind of help me a little bit. But, anyways, long story short, after 2 years of just like grinding and putting on shows and then I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. And the pressure of like, why haven't I made it? Why didn't I have a manager? I was comparing myself to everybody. I just like a series of divine kind of like horrible things happened. And I finally was like, okay, I can't continue like this. And I remember I got mugged. That was like the biggest thing was,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it wasn't horrible or anything, but it shook me. And I will say that like the universe, like sends us these signs. And if we don't, it's like Oprah always says, first it's a whisper, and then it's like kind of beating over the head if you
Yeah,
don't.
and then it's a kick in the pants,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I really that was the mugging for me, was like this divine intervention of like, "Girl, you gotta stop trying to act like everything is okay." Like, I remember walking back into my apartment after, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and it was like my face was kind of beat up a little bit, and I was like, "Wow, it's like everything I'm feeling on the inside just, like, staring right back at me in the mirror." And it gave me permission to feel it all, because I don't think people realize, I certainly didn't, like, what does it feel like when you go after a dream and it doesn't look the way that you thought? What do you do with all of that grief? It's literally you're literally grieving a dream that you've held since you were, like, for me, since I was a little girl, and all the ideas of, like, who I thought I was and where I was headed. Now it's like, I just didn't know what to do, and so I finally paused and I was like, "Okay, like, I get it. I'm just gonna surrender here." And I remember going to see a therapist, thank God, at the time, and she said, "You don't know what all of this is preparing you for." And I'll never forget those words, because I hung on to them like it was my life. I was like, "You mean I'm being prepared for something?" Like, it never occurred
Right.
to me. Yeah, it never occurred to me that somehow this was happening for me. Do you know? So that's when that seed was planted, and I started to the first book I picked up was Marianne Williamson's A Return to Love. And that just, like, cracked me open, because it was essentially like the medicine that I needed, talking about, you basically are well, actually, it was a workshop that I took called Something Different from Women. And she said to me, "Your thoughts and your words create your reality." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And I didn't realize at the time that I was contributing to the way my life was going. All I did was complain about how nobody was coming to my shows, and how everybody else seemed to be, further along in their career than I was. And I didn't realize, what you put your energy around is going to grow. So I kept manifesting nobody showing up at my shows and everybody else doing better than me, because that's all I talked about. That's all I thought about. So everything was skewed negatively. And so when I picked up that book and I realized, like, wow, I'm actually contributing to my life. I'm not a victim. Like, it's not just happening to me, that I'm contributing to it. Then, well, then I have the opportunity to change my life by the thoughts that I think and by the words that I say. And so that's really what started, was it was not getting what I wanted, broke me open, and I was like, okay, I'm ready. And so I say this a lot, because I feel like, people will get called in their life, like something major will happen, whether it's an illness or, like, literally it'll feel like the rug is, like, thrown out from underneath you. And that could be your greatest opportunity. Like, that is your soul calling you and saying, "Hey, there's another way to live," you know? And so that was my wake up call. And I just didn't stop. I just, like, picked up that book and it was like, boom, I, like, picked up Wayne Dyer, I picked up, Deepak Chopra. I mean, I just didn't stop. It was like I had this appetite for this kind of language, and this it's like almost like I was remembering this was how life was supposed to be lived. Do you know what I mean? And I had just literally woken up to that, and I was like, wow. And so I shifted everything. I started doing gratitude lists. I started to be really mindful of the way I would speak about my life. I stopped gossiping. I stopped complaining. And I kind of went to the extreme. I don't know if this happened to you, but I went to, like, the extreme of, like, I never complained about anything. I never, because I thought, if I put those words out there, I'm going to get more of it. But later, and as I'm sure you are aware, it's like, it's important to actually be real. And if that's how you're feeling, it's important to get those feelings out. Like, it's about balance. So I understand that now. But at the time, I was, like, really strict. I'm a really good student. And I did change my life for sure, 1,000%.
It's interesting because when you mention the big things that happen, right? The big, kicks in the pants, so to speak, because the one thing that I have now come to realize is that when I get the nudge, I don't actually let it, well, hopefully, sometimes it's not under our control, but when I can help it, when I get the nudge that, hey, you got to make a change, I'll make the change and I'll know that this is coming, versus waiting and not listening to your body, listening to your intuition, and then eventually getting the kick in the pants, right? So, like, to actually get that heads up right away is always helpful. But in the beginning, you don't know any better, right? So you asked me if I went through this. I did and I didn't. Like, I went through that voracious reading and gathering of information. I absolutely went through that. It went like for almost 2 years, I think. But prior to that, I actually didn't even know I was going through a spiritual awakening. I just thought I was going crazy. So I had no reference for what I was doing. So essentially, like, when you were asking me if I made sure I wasn't saying anything negative or anything else, like, I don't think I really had the opportunity to do that because, like I said, I didn't know I was going through the spiritual awakening for the first few years. And then once I realized that I was, and once I started doing the research and everything else, that's when I started saying, oh, okay, cool. But like for me, it was a little bit of a different experience. Like, I didn't feel like I could like fake the universe out into thinking that I'll never speak negatively or I'll never have a negative, like it was stressing me out so much to not think negatively that I didn't understand how to not think negatively. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And, and I think that's a good point because I'm naturally a positive person. And so my whole life, I didn't realize, but as a coping mechanism as a child, I just numbed. Like
Mm.
so it was very natural for me to just not talk negatively. I mean, even though I'm telling you, oh, I was complaining about my life, I was doing what the way I was brought up, which was like, oh, this is the reality. The reality is I'm not getting a lot of people on my shows. I didn't think it was complaining. I just thought that's what was happening. But I didn't realize why I kept talking about it. I was putting energy behind it, and that's all I was getting, right? So, but because I was shifting my mindset, I was like, oh, this totally feels right to just not talk about. I just meant not share it with anyone. Like I didn't open up to friends or anything. I did it at the privacy of my own room. But I thought by doing that, I was like, oh yeah, like I can do this. I can just cry alone and work through it myself and just not never complain and never say anything. But like I just thought I could. It wasn't about, I mean, I wasn't conscious. Like when people talk about spiritual bypassing, which sometimes I used to be triggered by because you don't realize you're doing it. Like we have to cut people slack and like be shaming people when they're just trying to like literally go from one extreme to the other, which is like, okay, like I want to do better. So I'm not going to say this, this, and this. And you don't realize that you're spiritual bypassing it. You just think like, no, this feels better. It feels better to just not talk about it. It feels better to not think about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a swing of the pendulum. It is
Absolutely.
literally part of the process. So, yes, I like when people bring up spiritual bypassing because it is important to acknowledge, but it's not something to be shameful of because ultimately that kind of defeats the whole purpose anyway, right?
Totally, but I do find that online there's a lot of, like, calling out people, and I'm just like, really, we don't have to do that. It's okay." Like, everybody's where they're at, right?
And the people who do that are very much in their spiritual ego. So,
Oh, we could talk about how the ego gets spiritualized too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And even with that, that is still perfect and fine because that's exactly where those people are. And that's
Absolutely,
perfectly fine.
exactly. Yeah, welcoming it all, yeah.
So once you sort of realized that you were on this path, what happened next for you?
Well, I was still working. I went back to a corporate job, which I promised I would never do. And I remember after the first week, just like crying, like, I can't believe I'm here. I like total tail between my legs. Like I just felt so humbled. Like, what am I doing? But it was actually a blessing. It was a grace because it gave me some time to actually apply these principles. Like it's one thing to read the books, right? We have to actually go out into our world and move through it differently. And so I was building trust. I was building self-belief in myself and really belief in something greater than myself, right? And so those 2 years back at that job, and also it was different because I wasn't hiding who I was. And the other jobs, I was hiding who I was. In this job, I was like, no, like everybody knew I'm a singer. I have, I do all these things. And I was adding more of that into that job. Like I even, because I'm a really creative person, I even decided to create this newsletter called the Cube Chronicles because we were in cubicles. And I thought I just wanted something to do that felt like me and that was creative. And so I added that and like it really bonded me. So I'm like, I'm just going to be me, even in this mundane job. like I'm grateful for it. Do you see how the mindset shifted and how I used it to my advantage, you know?
We all have moments where we kind of feel stuck in our spiritual journey. For that reason, I have created a 2-day soul discovery workshop where we really start to tap in to those gifts that you have, discover those beautiful spiritual gifts. We access the Akashic records. We talk about how you can really understand and listen to your intuition and your guides. We do group work where you can practice these skills with others in a beautiful, divinely guided environment. If you would like to take part in this incredible healing work, I recommend that you head to my website and go to the store, and you can sign up for this personalized 2-day workshop in my apartment in Paris, right here in Paris. You can join me for 2 full days, and we are going to explore everything that you need to know about your soul. That is infinitesoullove.com/store. The next one is taking place April 15th and 16th, 2023. Whether you live in France or whether you're just trying to learn French, sometimes navigating the nuance of the vocabulary can be daunting. Navigating the French is a podcast that explores each one of these nuances that will help you integrate the language into your everyday vocabulary and help you understand the history of that word or concept. Emily Monaco is a delight to listen to. So head over to Paris Underground Radio, Navigating the French. We will be right back with the Heart of You after a word from our sponsors. Welcome back to the Heart of You on Paris Underground Radio.
And then I remember thinking, well, what else do I love? And at the time yoga had really saved me. And because again, it's in our body. We have to remember that it's not just about going to therapy and clearing it cognitively, like it stays in your body, every cell of your body. So I knew that going to yoga, I was moving through so much. Like I would be crying in Shavasana. And so it saved me because it wasn't about the words. It was about just literally, can I trust my body again? And I was building strength again, because after you've been kind of attacked like that, you do in your body, you feel like, can I trust it? What else is going to come around? So I was using yoga in so many beautiful ways to really build that trust. And so I knew I loved yoga. I'm like, what if I just went through teacher training? At this point, this was like 15, 16 years ago in New York City when it was not as prevalent as it is now. And I was like, let me just sign up. I don't really want to be a teacher, I don't think, but let me just go through the process. So I signed up, went through it, and still was not certain I was going to teach. Because again, it's like, it's not like you make a ton of money teaching, and I'm living in New York City. I'm like, how do I even do this? Right. And what I remember was like little synchronicities would happen. I ran into a friend who was part of my yoga teacher training, and she was like, where are you teaching now? And I was like, oh, I'm not. She's like, why? You were so good. I'm like, really? And so there was that. And then there was like, I remember trying to get a job at Lululemon.
Oh, yeah.
Let me just get out of this corporate job. Anything, God, anything. Can you help me get, Lululemon seemed perfect, perfect. I didn't get the job, and I was like, oh, I was so like, I was so upset that I was like, and then I heard this voice, well, what do you really want? I was like, well, I want to teach. So I went on Craigslist. I saw an ad. At the time, I was living in Astoria, Queens. I saw an ad in Astoria, Queens for a new yoga studio. They were looking for teachers. I sent my resume, which had nothing on it but that I graduated. I got a call. They freaking called me and offered me a class. Can you come in Saturday? I mean, that's what we're talking about
Wow.
synchronicity. Like, you don't have to do it all on your own, right? And what do you really want? Skip. You can skip lines here. You don't have to like,
Right.
and so then I had another really beautiful synchronicity. And I don't know who is familiar with New York, but there was this major corporate gym called New York Sports Club. They owned like 100 gyms in the city. I walked in one day, still, I don't have much experience at all. And I was like, how can I teach here? The guy was like, oh, there's an audition on Saturday. was like, okay, I show up. It turns out you had to fill in like this whole online application. It was like they don't accept you right away. You wait like a year to get invited. I just show up and I was like, she doesn't call my name. I walk up to her. I'm like, I was just told this audition was happening. Can I audition anyway? Sure. I got in. I got in. So all of these things like showed me like, okay, we're doing this. So I quit that job. But before I even quit that, before I got all this, I had quit the corporate job. I just got into a place that I was done. I remember like a colleague of mine got promoted and it felt like a sock in my stomach. Like somebody hit me really hard. And I was like, what am I waiting for? Waiting for something outside of me to tell me, give me permission to leave, like, just go. So I walked in to my boss's office and I just said, "I'm leaving." So yeah, I did all of this after I quit. Just want to give the audience context that why I call myself a fearless coach because I did these things before there was anything. Like I just left without any job to go to. This is
So
the
you had no safety net, nothing.
Nothing, and this was at a time that it's a lot scarier the second time, This is the thing about fear. It's like you've got the first time you do something, you kinda have this, like, excitement because you're like, "Oh, this is the first time," so even if it doesn't work out, you're like, "Oh, it's okay," because you don't know what it's gonna feel like. When you do it again, and then again, and then again, oh boy, you are stepping through, like, 3 rings of fire because now it's like your body, everything knows what it feels like to have it not work out. So what other story are you going to tell? How are you going to walk through this differently? So the second time is a lot scarier, but I did it. I felt free. And I remember I was like, I'm not telling my parents because they were in LA. I'm not telling anybody. This is my decision, my choice. I own it. And I'm just saying, God, like, I trust everything's going to work out. And it was definitely challenging and hard. And, I'd wake up in the morning and, what do I want today to bring? You have to really intend and have an intention for your day when you don't have a job to go to and give you that. And I was like, my job is to get out there and to just like walk into every single place and like say, okay, can I teach here? And just make it work. And so all of these things kind of led to really building a beautiful yoga career. And I became a teacher and I ended up getting a job teaching at every major gym in New York City. And then after like a year or two, I remember thinking, I don't like the feeling of just, being at the mercy of somebody giving me a class, because you're still like collecting a paycheck. So I'm like, and I just heard this voice like, do it on your own. So I would rent out spaces in studios and because I had built a huge community now. Like people were coming to all of my classes. They weren't just going once a week. They were like, when else can I come? So they were coming Mondays and Tuesdays and I built a email list. And so I remember doing a workshop for the very first time on my own. And I was like, I baked cookies. I was like, we're gonna call it the holiday heart opening class or whatever I said. And I'm also a singer, so you know this. So I brought my guitar and I was like, I'm gonna sing in Shavasana, live music. So there I was adding and part of me like that was different. That was
Beautiful.
and I had 30 people sign up and I made more money in that one workshop than I made the whole week. And I was like, okay, this is what we're doing. So it just every step of the way, trying it, scared, didn't know if it was going to work, kept doing it, did it with my first retreat to Costa Rica, then the second retreat to Guatemala, then Peru, then Morocco. I mean, it's just you keep going. It doesn't go away, the fear, but you just keep going anyway. I think the willingness to move through it gets easier because you have enough experience of going either way I'm going to be okay.
Yeah. It's something that is super, super important on this journey. And I feel like it is something that is also the hardest, which is taking that leap and trusting that the universe has your back. I don't know if you're familiar with Louise Hay, but, she wrote the book, The Universe Always Has Your Back. And it's something that we all know. We all know that when you do take that leap and you're on the right path, the universe is going to show up for you and things are just going to fall into place. But you have to take that first step. And that first step is absolutely the hardest. And that's where you come in. So, this is what you excel at. This is what you have cultivated over the course of your experience. And then, after obviously you started teaching yoga. So, now you are a fearless coach. What exactly is a fearless coach? Like, what do you do and how do you help?
Well, I help get rid of all of your fear. That's what I do, Annette. No, I mean, that's obviously not possible. I call myself a fearless coach. Well, I essentially help you change. I help you transform. I help you evolve. I help you go from where you are, which is lost and disconnected from your true self, feeling like a victim in your circumstance in your life, feeling like everything is going wrong. I help you move from there into really the person that you came here to be, to the powerful co-creator you came here to be, to the version of yourself that you have an inkling of. You do have a knowing of this version of you. You do know you have this potential. And when you feel this disconnection from it, that's the pain. That's the call. That's your soul calling. That's the answer. That's when you wake up, right? So, yeah, and you're going to have to move through a ton of fear. Of course, it's scary to change. It's scary to change. Big changes, small changes, all of it is scary. And so I essentially help you through this journey, and I do it through, I have a 3-step process. I do it through number one, awareness, right? We have to become aware. We have to kind of become conscious of, again, like what are the voices that are playing in our minds? What are the belief systems that we're holding? And how can we change them? And I have a whole process which we can get into if you want, but where I do belief clearings on people. I do soul readings and belief clearings. And then the second piece, the big piece and the big chunk is really I assign you fearless action steps. So it's not just about doing something scary. It's also about going, well, where are you hiding in your life, right? Like what are the aspects of yourself that you're not allowing others to see? And how can we pull some of that out into the world? Because again, like we came here to be whole beings. So if you like, for instance, there's so many, all of my clients have these secret passions. Like I wanted to be a singer, but they were told they weren't good enough, or their parents didn't think it was okay, or they didn't feel they could make money. That's really just the mind talking you out of it, right? But they had this passion. And so it's just sitting there dormant. And it's like your soul gave you these gifts, whether it's to sing, to dance, to write, to play, whatever it is, to come alive. That's what makes you come alive. That's what makes you you. Your unique imprint of who you came here to be, it lies in those special, beautiful passions of yours that you're just not doing anything with them. So I really help pull those out and go, okay, like I've given many people, like you're going to start an Instagram account, you're going to sing every single day. So I'm really adding more joy, more feeling of like they're feeling connected to a part of themselves that they just wouldn't allow themselves permission to, right? So you do that enough, then there's an adrenaline happening. Then you start to feel like there's inspiration flowing. Then you start to be able to listen and hear your own soul speaking to you, your own inner voice, right? And so that's the third piece, is awakening. I really help people awaken to their own co-creative power, right? Their relationship with their higher self, and what does that look like, and how can we build a tool set that's really unique to you. People think like, oh, I have to meditate every day for this amount of minutes, but it's about creating something that's going to feel doable and workable and exciting for you. It could be different. It can be you journal every day. It could be you. I'm a big component of voice notes. I'm a huge voice note. So I walk along the Seine River and I do voice notes. It doesn't have to look like a traditional, this is what it means to be spiritual. Like that's the fun of it, is like the more people get into who they really are, the more authentic their spiritual toolbox and their experience really starts to show up as, right? It becomes really unique to them. I have a client who she draws pictures now, like of emotions. Like I help people through a lot of difficult emotions, right? I have a lot of tools and a lot of practice through this. And she starts to draw like almost like a children's book, like what anger feels like in her body. But this is a beautiful practice to, and I often say, like, we want to ask our emotions, like, what is it that you want me to know? Like, how can I serve you? So there's just so many beautiful practices that I'm sure you as well have tried and really love and continue to build my arsenal of tools as I live the rest of my life. But this process is so exciting for me because it's an element of me, and at the same time it's like you go through something painful that you feel like you'll never be able to go through, and it's like it's our opportunity and privilege to now share those tools and how we got through it with other people, to hey, you don't have to suffer. Like there's another way. And I don't know if you know this, but maybe you don't. But when I turned 40 is when I decided to do 40 fearless acts, where I spent a year stepping into fear. And really, it was just an honest, my intention was like, I just feel like I'm stuck. Like I had been teaching yoga for a few years. Even though it seemed really good, there was a part of me that was like, I know there's more. There's so much more that I have to offer, and I want to have more fun in my life. I don't want anything to hold me back. So it was like, I was like, I'm going to do things that I've never done before, that straight up scare me and that just make me laugh. Like I literally, one of my fearless acts was to go skipping, to join the skipping club in New York City. And I swear to you, I have never laughed that hard in my life. When I was like, what do I need for skipping to skip? I was like, I need to get a one of those fanny packs. I can't skip with a big old purse on my shoulder.
Oh my
I gotta
gosh.
have one. I mean, I was so prepared. And this is what's so funny, when they put the meeting place, I get there and nobody was there. And I was like, oh my God, did I miss the skipping club? I was so bummed because I literally did buy a new fanny pack for this. And then I was talking to my friend and he was like, I was like, I don't know what to do. He's like, well, you could ask a stranger to skip with you. And I'm like, no way, I can't do that. That's ridiculous. I'm in Soho, like the heart of New York City. And this guy, right as I'm texting with my friend, this guy comes up to me and he's like, are you here for the skipping club? I was like, oh my God, do I look like I should be in the skipping club? And then it was so funny that I'm like, God damn it. Now I'm going to have to ask him. We got to skip. Like there's just no other way. So
Right?
I
Oh my
literally was like,
gosh.
do you want to go? He's like, yeah. So I swear to you, I was crying, laughing. So it was one of the most
So
pleasure.
the organizer didn't even show up?
I think we've just got the meeting place wrong. We ended up like they were supposed to end where we started. I mean, it was ridiculous, but it was meant to be because it was so funny. But I mean, I did crazy things. I got naked for an art class and ended up having my period. So I had to like cut the tampon string. And I did like,
Oh my
I
gosh.
tried on wedding dresses as a single person, and I passed out love notes to strangers in New York City. And I mean, I just did all kinds of stuff. I asked a, cute stranger for a kiss on the cheek. Every day I was pushing myself and stepping out of my comfort zone. And really, I was following this like natural inclination of like, what sounds like fun? What would just be so like, and because I was building a habit of doing it, the ego voice just was taking the back seat. I had no choice but to be like, okay, she's going to do it. So,
That is inspiring. That is super, super inspiring. Are you looking for a new book to read? Because I know I always am. Head to Storytime in Paris on Paris Underground Radio with your host, Jennifer Garrity, as she interviews fascinating authors that have a French connection. We will be right back with The Heart of You after a word from our sponsors. Welcome back to The Heart of You on Paris Underground Radio. As you're talking, like you're kind of striking a chord in me, just sort of looking at some of the fears that I still haven't dealt with, because fears, as fears come off in layers. It's not like you can sort of necessarily get rid of a fear all in one fell swoop. It happens over time in layers. And there have been various fears that I've had over the course of my lifetime. Fear of heights is one of them. And, right now I'm living in a larger building. I'm on the 11th floor, so now flying doesn't scare me as much as it used to, but the idea of like zip lining or bungee jumping, I'm like, oh, absolutely not. Never, like never going to do it. Like, like
right, right.
that's sort of the dialogue that's been in my head. Now, another fear that I have been working on recently, and I know you're going to be able to relate to this, and especially most expats will relate to this as well, is my fear of speaking French. And
Mm.
I have this weird, irrational fear. And the thing is that I've studied French for years and years and years. Then I moved here and realized that I literally know nothing. Like, even though I've studied it, I know nothing. And, my French is decent enough where I can get around and I can do the things that I need to do. But it still scares me because, like, I'll walk by a shop. And if I want to walk into the shop, I hesitate before I do. If I was in the US, I would just walk into a shop if I wanted to walk into a shop. I will
Mm.
hesitate here because I'm like, do I want to have a conversation? Do I want to, potentially not understand what the person is saying to me? Do I really want to have this interaction? And sometimes I'll be like, "No, it's not worth it to me. It's not worth it to me to go into this shop and look at whatever it was that I wanted to look at, and I'll just keep on walking." Right? So I find it's easier to do when I'm with other people. So when I'm with other people, I'll go anywhere. It doesn't matter. But if it's just me by myself, I have this really weird, irrational fear of going in, not being understood or not understanding, not being able to communicate, that kind of thing. When a lot of times you can sort of mix in English words, you can make mistakes, you can do all of these things. It's not a big deal, but for some reason, there is something within me that is still making me hesitate. So, I'm still sort of exploring that and figuring out, okay, why is it that I'm afraid of that? Like, what is the reason for my fear? Well, I know that some of it has to do with simply a desire. Like, there are times when I'm just like, I just don't feel like dealing with it. Like, I just don't feel like dealing with it. I'm just going to move on. But that part, we can kind of like put aside because there are times you just don't feel like dealing with certain things, and that's fine. But when you have the fear itself and you don't really know where it's coming from and why, you know, how do you find the information about that? Like, so when you have fears that you may not either be aware of or that you don't know how they started or where they originated and how to get rid of them, right?
Well, I mean, the first step is to welcome the fear, right? The fear is actually our protective, overbearing mother that is just letting us know that there's some sort of unprocessed wound that is hidden behind it. And so that's the first step is we want to welcome it. We want to say hello to it. And we want to understand, like, okay, what is this fear protecting me from? And we want to go into the feeling, right? Because if we keep trying to talk ourselves out of it, then it's just going to keep staying in our field and it really won't go anywhere, right?
Right,
And
exactly.
really, it's never the condition. It's never the condition of the person. It's always the pattern. So I would ask you, like, what do you think this fear is protecting you from? If you can think of a feeling, what is the feeling that it's protecting you from?
Let's see, embarrassment,
Mhm.
feeling maybe unintelligent or feeling not good enough. That's another one.
Mhm.
The feeling of not being perfect, not being able to be perfect.
Exactly. Would you say that's the strongest feeling, strongest emotion?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say not being perfect and then feeling embarrassed, like those 2 would probably be the first.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And then I'm just gonna ask you to close your eyes for a moment.
sure.
And I just want you, as you're thinking, right? It's not so now you're in the mind a little bit, but I want you to just access your body a little bit, like kind of drop into the body. And when you think about feeling not perfect and not good enough, where in your body do you feel that the most?
Yeah, solar plexus right away.
Hmm. And if you were to assign it a color, and just using our imagination, what color would you give us this emotion?
First color that's coming to me is blue.
Okay, awesome. So we're just gonna kind of use our imagination a little bit, if you don't mind. That's okay.
Yeah.
And I just want you to imagine a blue energetic cord coming from your solar plexus. And this cord is going to move all the way back in time, all the way back in time to a very, very young you. The first time that you felt embarrassed or not perfect or not good enough. And it's going to land on a memory, and it doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be true. It's just the first thing that's coming to you.
Well, the first thing I'm connecting to is the emotion of it, so I'm starting to feel really emotional about it.
Mhm.
The memory hasn't come yet, though.
That's okay. And the mind's gonna maybe try to analyze, and you don't need to worry about that. We're just gonna use the imagination, like just allowing the imagination to kind of bring you back to maybe the first time you might have felt this way, like landing on a very, very young you.
I'm getting 3,
Okay.
and I'm getting an image of my dad.
Okay. And tell me, image of your dad, and where are you?
I can't see what's going on around me, but I can see myself. I can see that I'm playing with something. I don't know what it is.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I can see at the moment.
Okay. So you're playing with something
Mhm.
and your father is there, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And so how are you feeling? What is the relationship? Are you playing and he's watching you? Or are you playing and he's not?
He's not particularly paying attention, but he is in a certain way, so it's like he's paying attention peripherally.
Okay. And so this little girl, this younger you, is feeling conflicted in some way that he's maybe not paying attention or not paying as much of attention as maybe she would like.
There are elements of it that are like him not paying attention, but then also, oh, okay, yeah. So I did something that I was really proud of, and it's like he didn't care and he didn't acknowledge it.
Mm, got it. So, what did this little girl do in order to receive love or safety? Because when we're children, those are really the only two things we care about.
Yeah.
And so we're just kind of going through, we're going back to like the memory, the emotion of it.
Mhm.
And when you made a choice in this moment to learn how to do something to receive either love or safety in this moment, because right now you're telling me that she didn't feel that way.
Right.
Yeah. So what was the coping mechanism that she used?
I withdrew
Mm-hmm. You withdrew. Tell me more.
because he wasn't paying attention to me. I withdrew within myself. So in other words, I'm seeing myself almost like turning my back to him and not showing him this cool thing that I did or whatever it was that I was proud of, like not wanting to show it to him anyway because he didn't acknowledge it. Like he didn't want to pay attention when I wanted to show it to him, so therefore I don't want to show it to him.
Got it. Beautiful. So you kind of learned that I'd rather just not share than share and get possibly hurt or rejected.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, what do you think the best thing that came out of this? Like, if you're looking now from the lens where you are now, like looking as you grew up and got older, what do you think the best thing? Like, what do you think your soul wanted to learn?
I mean, the first thing I'm getting is not needing the outside validation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we always want to look for how it served us, right? So back then, you built a limiting belief. You basically said, I have to act like I don't care, or I have to withdraw in order to get love or in order to be safe, right? Either one. We would test for those, right? And we would use words. And this is the second part of it. We use muscle testing because it's in your body. So, what I would do then is I would ask you to stand. We would do muscle testing and test for the very specific belief that you're carrying. And you do it through, it's kind of like your body is a pendulum, right? It's like the yes moving forward, the no's moving back, although everybody's a little bit different. And then I would ask you to say the belief, and we can do it now if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so why don't you stand up?
Okay.
I can't see you, audience, but I'm trusting.
Okay, I'm standing now.
Perfect. So we're going to trust the body again. You're going to try to drop into the body as much as you can.
Mhm.
And I'm just going to have you say yes, 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 and just see which way you move, right? It's either going to be forward or back. Sometimes it's to the side. You'll just tell me.
Okay. Yes, yes, yes. Wow, okay, cool. Yeah, that was backwards.
Backwards. Fabulous.
Mhm.
Okay. And then you're going to say no, no, no.
No, no, no. Yeah, that's forward.
Perfect. So your backwards is yes and your forward is no. Awesome. Okay. So you're going to say, I have to act like I don't care in order to be safe. You'll say that, and then you'll see which way you go.
Okay. I have to act like I don't care so I will be safe. That is a yes. Yeah.
All right. So then I would ask, can I clear this for you?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. So hang on, I'm going to clear this. And we're going to replace it with I'm ready, willing, and able to know what it feels like to be safe without acting like I don't care. And you'll repeat that.
Okay. Can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. I'm ready, willing, and able to know what it feels like
I'm ready, willing, and able to know what it feels like
to be safe without acting like I don't care.
to be safe without acting like I don't care.
It's safe for me to honor how I feel without acting like I don't care.
It's safe for me to honor how I feel without acting like I don't care.
It's safe for me to be vulnerable and show my vulnerability without acting like I don't care.
It's safe for me to be vulnerable and to show my vulnerability without acting like I don't care.
It's safe for me to be loved for showing my vulnerability without acting like I don't care.
It's safe for me to be loved, to show my vulnerability without acting like I don't care.
Beautiful. And then we're going to say the old belief to make sure we cleared it. So you say, I have to act like I don't care in order to be safe.
I have to act like I don't care in order to be safe. And I went forward.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that you don't carry it anymore. So what we're doing is everything is energy, everything is vibration,
Mm,
right? So that's why I'm asking for the specific words to get them right because everyone's a little different.
yeah.
And we're clearing it out of your energy field and then we're replacing it with these unconditional beliefs, right? And then we just want to make sure we cleared it. So now you have this awareness. It's no longer this, why am I doing this? Da-da-da. Now you understand why. And this is a beautiful thing because now when you walk into a store, you're going to be more empowered to be like, it's safe for me to show my vulnerability, be loved for it without acting like I don't care. And you'll walk right in or whatever you want to do. But you'll have this choice. That's what it's about. We want to feel empowered. We don't want to hide behind something because we don't understand it because it's just going to stay there.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because that is something that is permeated through my relationships as well, for my romantic relationships. So, yeah.
Exactly. That's what we also want to remember. It's never about the circumstance or the person. It's always the pattern. So now this is going to show up in all your whole life, every category of your life in every area, which is so cool. That's why this work is so powerful. So I'm curious to know like how this is going to show up in your personal life as
I
well.
am too, because here's the really fascinating part about this kind of work is that I have done a ridiculous amount of work on myself and my relationship life and unconditional love and shadow work and all of the things, right? I've done so much of this work. And yet, here we are on this podcast, and you just unearthed another origin point of a fear that I haven't looked at from this perspective yet, right? So I may have looked at this fear in another way at another time, but as you shift and change in your spiritual awakening process, the way that you look at things changes and the way that you approach things energetically changes. So, like, now in this very moment was the exact right time for me to address this, right? And so you were able to now point me in the direction of that fear and of that belief system and sort of bring light to it, right? So, I mean, and it's such incredible work. I love it.
There's a reason why Paris is considered one of the most romantic places in the world. Lily Heisey of Romancing in Paris explores all of these little hidden places where you can experience the love and the romance of the City of Light. You can find Romancing in Paris at parisundergroundradio.com.
We will be right back with the heart of you after a word from our sponsors. Welcome back to the Heart of You on Paris Underground Radio.
First of all, thank you for allowing me to do that. It's very vulnerable and there's a whole myriad of experiences and emotions that come up when people do this work because it's very deep. We're going into a memory. But what I think is so powerful is like, I was working with a client who came to me after a failed, IVF treatment, a miscarriage. And she was like, I just don't know what to do. And I was like, we have to get off the topic completely. Like that's the other thing is like people think that like you cannot get the solution from the same energy and vibration of the problem, right? So, and I knew that this was not the problem. It wasn't about the IVF or the miscarriage. This is her invitation. This is her soul calling her. Something else is going on, and this is the wake up call. And it's working. It's like showing her through this particular circumstance, right? Which in her case is amazing. So we got off the topic completely and we spent like the next 3 months, like looking at every other area in her life. I'm like, okay, We worked on issues about control, not trusting her body, not surrender, surrender. And so we did these belief clearings that I never once said the word pregnancy. I never once said miscarriage. It was never, ever brought up. Let me tell you something. The first time she tried to get pregnant on her natural account, she got pregnant and now her kid is 3 months old.
Oh my God, that's
A
beautiful.
miracle. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we got off the topic and she was so willing and ready to do this work. And we started to go, okay, what else in your life? Like, this is an invitation. Let's go deep. Let's get there. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's never about the thing you think it's about. It's the greater invitation, the greater call that your soul is like, hey, you're not in balance. There's something else going on. And yeah, so it's really powerful work, and it's very exciting. I mean, I've changed my life. I mean, transformed my life. I've just like you, I was like working through all the things I need to, I'm like, I'm doing. And then it was like, once I got to this specific tool and this modality and really connecting to my soul, because as you know, when you are a channel and you're starting to do readings for people, you can't help but start to build a trust because you're like, I could have never known this stuff,
Right.
so I have to trust now my intuition, and so it just that really shifted my whole world and was like, "Okay, I understand what faith means now." I wasn't even in the ballpark of, like, what faith means, you know? So, it's just a beautiful, fascinating journey to get to come to, and again, like, we're here to really be whole beings, to understand the fullness of things, so, it's a journey, and like you said, it's a delayering. We just kinda pass through another layer, but we're at from a higher perspective, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because this came at exactly the right time from the standpoint of I had been resisting getting a tutor or taking more classes. And, I just started with a new tutor about a month ago. And so I'm actually seeing him twice a week, every week. And and it's slowly but surely, starting to get me to open up and be okay with making mistakes, and like he's a really wonderful tutor, and he really holds that space to allow me to make mistakes without making me feel like crap, And so like it's really cultivating that. So I think that in this moment, this was able to sort of come through because I had already taken that one step to say, okay, you know what, this, because what I was feeling was that my inability to communicate and to be myself and to have a personality in French was actually keeping me separate from this country that I love, this country that I have made my home, right?
Exactly.
So, like in relation to what we just worked on, it's keeping me separate. That's exactly what I did in that memory, right? So
Mhm.
so yeah, it's all connected. It's really, really beautiful.
Awesome. I love it.
So is there okay, what fears are you currently working on? Is it easy to sort of identify your own fears? Because I always know that when it comes to doing sessions with clients, it's always easier to read for other people than it is for yourself. Do you find that the case for you or no?
Oh, yeah. Of course, because there's blind spots. We
Yeah, of
can't we
course.
can't know all the things, you know what I mean? But that's where you use your life. I use my life to show me what my fears are. You know what I mean? It's so easy. I'm like, "Oh, there's the trigger. Okay." I mean, I can tell you right now, it's showing up in intimate relationships with men, and even just having, like, a crush on someone, and how it's, like, got me so unnerved, and it's like, what is behind that? It's like because of this deep fear of like of rejection or looking stupid or whatever it is. So it's like, and really coming to terms with like letting go of an old idea of what I think a romantic partnership is supposed to look like all of that, and showing up as my full self and who I am now, and not fearing being, oh, that's too much, you know? So yeah, I mean, it doesn't end, it doesn't stop. You just have to, I would say, for anybody listening, because I definitely don't want to discourage people thinking like it never ends. And like, because like when you're just starting, it feels like, oh, it never ends. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I will say, like, I don't know about you, but for me, like, I'm so practiced with like leaning in that even when it's like you're going through something, I also at the same time hear a voice saying, and this too is God's love. This too is God's love. And like there's a grace that comes over me because I understand it's here for me. It is here for me. And one thing I will say about fear is like when you think about the physical, like what does it feel like in the body? It feels like a fire. And we need that fire because that fire is going to burn through the old aspects of who we are, the old limiting beliefs, the old patterning. So we need that fire. That is our great, that is how we move from one, I guess, from where we are to our fullest expansion. So fear is good. And when you think about it that way, it's like, oh, cool. Like you can get excited, like, and here we are again. Awesome. I'm ready to like shed this new layer. I'm ready to move through another ring of fire. Like bring it?
And those rings of fire are less hot the longer you do this. So, when you first start out, maybe it's, it's pretty hot, right? You're just like, "Oh god, I don't want to go through that." But then over the course of time, the flames get lower and lower, right? And it takes less time to get through what you need to get through. And
Yeah, for sure.
like right now I can say, because I mean, there was a lot of emotion coming up in me while we were doing that exercise. And so I
Mm,
can definitely say when we're done with this podcast, I'll probably have a good cry, but
awesome.
it'll happen for probably about a half an hour or maybe 20 minutes, and then it'll be done. And that'll be the end of it. Whereas, the beginning of my awakening, maybe that would trigger, a mini dark night of the soul where I'd be crying for days. You know what I mean? So it just depends on where you are in your journey as to how much the energy affects you. And the way that I like to look at it is like, when you do that first initial clearing, that very first powerful clearing of something, it's like you're getting rid of the biggest part of it. And so it takes the longest to get through that part. Then as you go in through the layers, you're getting into the core of what it is. And those layers are smaller, right? When you get into the core of something. So, it may get, easier and easier and easier. But then once you get to the actual core, the very center of it, that's like that last big push. It's like that last big, like monster that's coming out of the closet. And you're like, okay, am I going to fall for you? No, I'm not gonna fall for you. You're just a monster in the closet. Get back in the closet. Like, so either that or no, get out of the closet and leave my house,
Right,
like
right, totally. No, but that's a really good distinction to make, and it's important because, you just went through this like it was I couldn't tell you were emotional at all, but and it's important that I always tell people we have to let the body also release it, so that what you just said about crying, like, I mean, to me, that's such a beautiful way of shedding another layer, right? Another guard to our heart. So it's like you just actively with the intention, I'm releasing this now. You know what I say all the time? I hold my hand to my heart and I said, it's safe to feel this.
yeah.
It's safe to feel this now. Like that's such a beautiful mantra, like because you really are capable of it. It wouldn't come up if you weren't capable for it to release it. So we have to know like we're equipped for this. We really are. And to ask for these things, like to ask for the guidance, to call out, like I call all the time. Sometimes I'm like, God source, like, can you let me sleep all through the night tonight?
Oh, I do
That's
that all the
like,
time. I do that all the time. I'm like, okay, can you please just like,
can I just sleep
yeah.
all through the I'm like, I'm okay, but then I still have to get up and go to the bathroom. But you can ask for these things, and we have to remember, like, we came here on the leading edge. Like, really, our spiritual side, our souls, everybody's here to work for us. So, like, it's okay to ask for things. And then also to really take care of ourselves, through these, letting our bodies. And I don't know, a great tool for me is breath work. I don't know if you've ever done it, but it's so powerful and it's a way to just like let the body release without getting like the mind can get kind of check out.
Yeah, I haven't tried breath work yet. I actually am interviewing a gentleman named Niraj who started Soma breath work. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But so I'm going to be interviewing him on the podcast actually in the next couple of weeks here. I would love to try breath work as well because I know that that is a powerful tool. And that just goes to show, like, I mean, you can be on this journey like I have for more than a decade and still not have tried all of the modalities yet and still not, doing all of the things yet, and just to actually address what you had said earlier, how you were like, well, I couldn't even tell you were emotional. Well, there's an aspect of that I was definitely holding back. Like, I was trying not to cry because I knew if I did, I might just lose it. And then, you'd be sitting here listening to me sob for, 15 minutes on the podcast, so
This
like,
would be also beautiful,
right.
like, it's okay. I understand what you're saying, and I just wanna just say, like, feel so proud because that's so vulnerable of you to be like I didn't even I was just like, "Let's just do this. Let's just go right there,"
Yeah, yeah.
And you're like, "Okay." So, I just wanna honor that, and it's okay, and you can say stuff like that. You can be like, "I'm gonna I'll take care of you," or "I'll take care of my body," or whatever it is when I'm ready.
Yeah, normally, like, if this was a session, like an actual session you were doing for me, I would just let it go. I'd be like, "Yeah, okay, I'm just gonna sob." But, like, it's, not cute with stuffed nose and snot when you're, like, recording a podcast. So I wanna save my viewers from that audible joy.
No, it's so brave. This work is so brave. Like, just know wherever you are on the spiritual path, whether it's, the first time you're trying to do this work, like it's so brave. And I say there's nothing more fearless than being who you really are. And that's what we came here to do. And so when you decide to step forward towards this path, to answer the call, to do this work, you are saying, I want to be who I am. I know you know that that's why you're feeling the pain, because you're like disconnected from it, like you're stopping yourself from you're kind of outgrown who you are, right? We're meant to grow and evolve. It's like, so we got to say yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love Paris for all of its myriad of options of things to do throughout each and every day. However, it can get a little overwhelming sometimes to figure out what you want to do because there's so much to do. If you're in this position, I highly recommend you listen to Don't Miss This with Jennifer Garrity. She gives you the best of what is going on in Paris for each particular week. It is definitely something I listen to every Sunday, so go and check it out at parisundergroundradio.com.
We will be right back with the Heart of You after a word from our sponsors. Welcome back to the Heart of You on Paris Underground Radio. How does somebody work with you? Is it multiple sessions? Do you do like packages? Is it single sessions? How does that work?
Well, right now I do one-off sessions. So like what we just did with you. And then I also do a soul reading, that's usually about an hour and 15 minutes. You can just book one session. And then the coaching is where we really get to go deep, because that's like 3 months or 5 months. And that's where I'm adding probably about three of these, maybe five of these if we do 5 months. But the majority of it is like the journey really is a co-creative kind of journey where we're working together. In each session we show up and we're like, okay, what do we want to tackle next, but there is that goal of moving towards, again, who you came here to be, and to give you all of these tools so that you feel literally like, oh my God, I feel like the complete different person than when I started. And then I'm starting an Awaken Your Soul group coaching program. I just finished the first round, so I'm going to do another one at the beginning of the year. And then I'm also a yoga teacher, as you know. So I'm doing a yoga retreat. I'm planning one for next summer for the south of France. And we're going to do a whole combination of this kind of work and yoga, and then going out and having fun,
Oh my
which
God,
is what I love to
that
do.
is incredible, because one of the things that I'm like trying to work towards at the moment is to actually do retreats maybe 3 or 4 times a year, where we would take like a full weekend and do the Akashic records. Maybe there'd be yoga, maybe there would be meditation, or numerology, or whatever it happens to be. But then what you just said is so super important, is to have fun. Like, so
Hmm.
many of these retreats that people go on, and they're amazing. They're amazing retreats, but it's like the fun aspect is sort of missing, right? So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. You and I are going to have to talk offline, because I think that this could be a lot of fun. I would love to work together.
I would love that too. Well, and I always say, like if I were to leave this planet, right, like tomorrow, what's the one thing that I would turn around and tell everybody? And it would be, have more fun.
Yes.
We really came here to have fun, to have a good time. Like, we forget about that, and so that's also my something that I'm really good at, finding the fun. And yeah.
Ah, that's so great. So, how do people get a hold of you? What is your website and your social media handles?
Yeah, my website is www.charlenelite.com. So it's my full name. And then I'm on IG, Instagram, and I have yet to join the TikTok or anything else. I'm on YouTube, but I haven't done a whole lot on YouTube. So those are the really just IG. And then you can sign up for my newsletter, and that's where I share all the new offerings. And yeah, those are the big ones. So
Your Instagram is Charlene Light, right? Okay,
yes,
so it's CharleneLite. That is
correct.
her Instagram handle. And by the way, also, Charlene has a podcast. And
Yeah.
do you want to tell us a little bit about that as well?
Yes. Well, it started by, that year that I spent tackling my fears. I wrote a blog about it. Then I'm like, well, let me make it a podcast so I can give you all the details that I couldn't really share in the blog. So the first season is all of those 40 fearless acts, and then the second season is me moving here to Paris, which I moved in March, and and actually that first episode, I gotta say, because I really walk you through like what it took. I mean, that was like a huge fear. I had to work through a lot of fear of moving here. I'm sure everybody can relate who's an expat. But it's funny because I'll get messages from just random people like, I loved your podcast about moving to Paris and da da da. So I think it's really important that we remember, like, we go through these things and we come out of it on the other side. It's important to share these stories with people because they really do help, you know? But yeah, and then I share all kinds of crazy stuff, like trying to find an apartment here and like all the things that
Oh, I
you
mean,
know
the
are
apartment, the bank, the all of the
yes,
like all of
yeah,
that is all yeah.
yeah,
It's a story
yeah.
for each and
Mhm,
every one
mhm.
of us.
Totally. But yeah, it's called The Fearless Lady.
I love it. It sounds actually like incredibly bingeable. Like
Yes, yes.
I feel like I would I haven't started listening yet, but I have a feeling that when I do, I'm probably just going to like tear through it. So, yeah, that's incredible. Charlene, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been super powerful work. It's been just such a joy getting to know you. And Charlene is in Paris, in case you didn't pick up on that throughout the course of this episode. And she and I met actually at a cacao ceremony not too long ago. So keep your eyes peeled on social media. And if you are in Paris, we do have a Divine Feminine Spiritual Circle, and that is a Facebook group. So if you're
Mhm.
interested in joining that, please let us know in the comments on social media. If you want to join, please just let us know that you want to join the Divine Feminine Spiritual Circle, and we will add you to the group.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. I've been meeting so many great people that are doing this work here in Paris, and I feel like we've all been called to come here and to kind of
100% we have.
yeah.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Cool, cool. All right. So, as per usual, you know how to get a hold of me. If you haven't been to my podcast yet, and this is the first time listening, you can reach me at infinitesoullove.com, and you can reach me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, as well as YouTube at Infinite Soul Love 1111.
This episode of The Heart of You was produced by Jennifer Garrity for Paris Underground Radio. For more great content, please join us on Patreon.